Hello everyone. Subha Pravat, very good morning. Namaskar. It's really, thank you for the clap that was about to begin, and sorry about slowing it down. Thank you so much for inviting me here. Um, the way it reads, do you have what it takes to become an entrepreneur? Um, that, that is very inspiring. I think this is what we need in the country. Um, as was mentioned, I'm leading a campaign called the Daayitwa Abhiyan. So while preparing for this talk, I had the opportunity to think more about what we are doing through the campaign, Daayitwa. And I'm really delighted to share with you some of my learnings on this theme of building an inclusive ecosystem for entrepreneurship and innovation. Let me begin with a story of an entrepreneur from rural Nepal. Rural Nepal, because if we are really talking about inclusion, this is important because entrepreneurs in rural Nepal are fighting, are trying to thrive in an environment where the ecosystem is weak or non-existent, right? Weak infrastructure, weak value chain, weak finance, weak so many things. In 2016, I met Goma Bhandari from Palpa. She used to do vegetable farming, but monkeys were causing her a lot of trouble. You know, monkeys want the vegetables. So one day, she was looking at her farm, really with her hands next to her forehead and thinking about, what do I do with these monkeys? And so then she spots a lemon tree that was planted by her father-in-law about 27, 28 years ago. And the lemon tree is green, lemons are ripe, untouched by the monkeys, because monkeys are scared of the thorns, right? So here is an interesting situation where, amidst the challenges, she sees an opportunity, right? So, and this is indigenous knowledge. So she planted 200 of them, but the journey was not easy because the community, the neighbors began to complain to her family that your daughter-in-law has gone mad. She's destroyed all the vegetables and she's planted thorns. So she's growing thorns, right? The journey of a woman, and here a woman entrepreneur, is not easy because there are many societal challenges that they need to overcome. They don't own the property, and then she's with the in-laws. She persevered. So when we met her, we supported her to grow 200 more plants, and she was facing this challenge. This is a hill in Palpa, so she didn't have enough water supply, right? So the innovation that came to rescue was a plastic pond. Plastic pond, it's not new to the world, not new to Nepal, but in her context, this was the innovation that saved her, because now with steady water supply, she could go forward with her 400 plants. From then to now, she went from 40,000 rupees per season to 17 lakh today per season. From employing 2 to 3 people seasonally, she employs now 10 to 12 people. From a market of just 2 small towns, Dumbre and Tansen Bazaar in 2016, she's now in Tansen, Butwal, Pokhara, and Kathmandu, Chitwan, Sangza. She's also taught lemon farming to 8 other women in that hill, right? 8, and so each of them have done 200 more plants, and so she supports them with the saplings. She provides them with technical support so that they can grow the plants. And she is a value chain entrepreneur because she buys the lemon from others, and she's doing lemon juice, lemon pickle, all of that. She's competing with the Indian market because she produces excellent quality lemon. She's also chairperson of a local school. Her husband works with her. He's left his job as a teacher. Her son, who just graduated about 3 or 4 years ago with a bachelor's in agriculture, is committed to staying back in Nepal and doing more in the field of agriculture. She is popularly known as Kagati Didi. That hill is known as Kagati Pahad. So we have a collaboration with Nepali Times because when I met Kunda Dikshit, I told him, you write a lot about politicians, but what about people at the grassroots level, entrepreneurs like Goma, who are making a change? And so every month they have since then been publishing a story of at least one entrepreneur. So she's covered by Nepali Times. She's a person that the head of then FCDO wants to go visit. The governor of Nepal wants to go visit, and there's so many more people that want to go see her. She's very busy for all of us because she is building her enterprise. I met the chairperson of Tinau municipality, which is where her enterprise is. He knew of her, but what he didn't know was she had already become a national inspiration. So for the first time when I talked to her about Goma, it's like, wow, right? So now what do we learn from her story? If you think about ideas, she went from vegetable farming, traditional vegetable farming, to lemon farming, right? And this was never done before. So you can only imagine, in addition to the plastic pond, what other innovations she must have had to do. That is innovation. Right? The society, so many gender stereotypes. I got to only mention one or two, but there are so many more that from micro to macro level, when you go to banks, right? So there are so many more. And there, she built male allyship. She was able to, and this becomes important as in her case, it was important to build support of people that actually had authority in that system. But she also delivered results, which is why they trusted her. The finance, in rural Nepal, banks are not only missing, but the banks that there are, all the tellers are mostly men. Right? And so it's not easy, especially for young people and for women. When you don't have property in your name, it's not easy. So instead of just relying on affiliations or political connections, she actually worked on her innovation, showed results, and she was able to build trust with the banks. There is innovation there. And then tough market, no? Lemon, when we went with Rurik Marson, who was the head of FCDO, lemon would come from India at about 15, 20 rupees per kilo, and she sells at 100 rupees per kilo. How come she's able to sell at 4 times the price, right? Because the lemon is excellent. Right? The lemon is of excellent quality. Moreover, now she's created value-added products, right? So there is innovation there. Right? Now, this is not just a story of Goma. Through Daayitwa campaign, we've supported 105 other entrepreneurs in rural Nepal. I know this is a context where all of you are in urban setting, but there's a lot of, I think, learning, especially as we think about inclusion and innovation. We've supported 105 entrepreneurs, of whom I'm very proud to say 63 of them are women. In fact, we actually also run women-only enterprise accelerator program. We began in 2013 this journey we started with a MOU with Ministry of Industry because we always thought, we pilot scaling. For scaling, we need a lot of collaboration, particularly with the government. Today we have, this program has scaled to 3 provinces already, Bagmati, Gandaki, and Lumbini, and this year we're scaling the program to Karnali province. But this is, I think, not just the journey of these 105 entrepreneurs of Daayitwa. I think this is the story of many youth and women entrepreneurs all across Nepal, and for that matter, all of you here in this room, no? I think this is a shared story because all of us as entrepreneurs face, I think, 3 key challenges. And when it comes to that question, I think it's very important to, as an entrepreneur, to be able to answer these three questions. It's very important for ecosystem stakeholders, not just the government and entrepreneurs, but academic organizations like TBC, investment organizations like that of Tim and others, to address these three key challenges that entrepreneurs face. First, trust deficit. A lot of the times, as young people, will the family, society, bank, market trust you? Right? Because maybe you don't have that, the way, they expect you to talk. They probably already have preconceived notions. I mean, I face that, so I've had to, try my own ways of overcoming, physical, the way I appear so that people trust, right? So trust deficit becomes an important challenge. Insufficient capacity. And because especially as you're starting out, whether it's Tim so many years ago when he just had an idea, or you now, you may have the idea, you probably have the slide decks, but what about everything else that you also need? Now, I think that most important is not the how, but the why at that point in time when you begin, because the how unfolds itself. Still, do you have what it takes to build that trust and deliver results? Right? This is where I think as young people, as women, we need not just the technical capacity to build your enterprise, but also adaptive capacities to lead teams and navigate through very uncertain environments. And third challenge that a lot of us face is weak networks. We may not begin with the networks. Not all of us belong to families that have those networks. Just as you land in Kathmandu from your bachelor's or master's and you already have the networks formulated for you, right? So many of us may not have that. So are the entrepreneurs, do you have the access and will you have that access fast enough to be able to accelerate fast enough and achieve results? So these are three key challenges that I think entrepreneurs face, and these are the challenges that Daayitwa's Rural Enterprise Accelerator Program tries to address. But I think, REAP program is just one intervention of an NGO. What we need, Goma Bhandari's example is just one story. I think what we need is a system. We need a way to transform these stories of change into systems, into change systems, no? So this is where we need to think about what type of inclusive innovation ecosystem we must need. This is where we need to think about what type of policies the government must put together. So, and also I think in the federal context of Nepal, I've begun to think more about not just what we do here at the central level in places like Kathmandu, but what we can and should do in municipalities, in municipal Nepal. So with that in mind, Daayitwa, in collaboration with DFAT and the Asia Foundation, we conducted a study also co-led by Dr. Sujit Pandey, who is right here. And we went to 7 municipalities across 7 provinces in Nepal, right? And so there were 5 key issues that we found in rural Nepal, at the municipal level, in terms of building this inclusive ecosystem. The first was around really lack of entrepreneurial culture, right? It's so much easier to say, let's go abroad. Banks are also sort of like, built up in that manner. Family systems are also built up in the manner, right? Not surprisingly, about maybe 2,500 or so young people are leaving the country every day. I mean, this exists because the entrepreneurial culture that I can see in this room, not just in the front, but also behind, right? That culture wasn't prominent. And so I won't have the time to talk about what we can do, but one of the things that comes to mind is exactly what the British College is doing is building curriculum that truly builds entrepreneurial mindset So it's not about just teaching the ABC of entrepreneurship. It's really going to the core of it and building that adaptive capacity in youth. It's also actually targeting, secondary school, perhaps high school level curriculum. Second is, we found that the collaboration among government, private sector, and academia, the triple helix, extremely weak. This collaboration was extremely weak. And so we think, among many other things that we could do, one of them is to create entrepreneurship hubs in different parts of Nepal. And possibly, this then becomes an opportunity for capable entrepreneurs with motivation and ability to scale their ventures, to grant them the access to suitable acceleration programs. And possibly what might make sense is to set these up in universities, right? If the private sector is weak, and a lot of the private sector, might have trade mentality, then possibly universities can be a good place. And in fact, when we went to Birendranagar municipality, there's already the Midwestern University, right? So what about an entrepreneurship hub there, and what could an organization like TBC do? The third challenge that we saw was, there's a lot of trading mentality. So a lot of the producer, instead of production and entrepreneurship, there's a more trade. So this is where we thought that it's very important for local governments to promote entrepreneurs, because a lot of the times, they're fighting, and they're in this uphill battle. There's only so much they can do as well. So this is where I think local governments should think about, lowering taxes, subsidies, cold storage, many more of those interventions, so that entrepreneurs can grow their enterprise. Fourth one was very low female ownership, very low participation of women in companies. And I already mentioned the example of Goma Bhandari, right? And so a lot of the times as I work with the government, through Daayitwa, we've conducted many studies. In fact, we've worked with more than about 70 government outfits to conduct roughly about 170 plus research. And one of the things that we find is that a lot of these government interventions are not women sensitive. They haven't been built in a way that caters to this audience, right? So I think a lot of the programs need to take that into account. And finally, the support system for high growth entrepreneurs is extremely weak at the municipal level. There's a lot of focus on subsistence entrepreneurship. So one of the things to perhaps think in rural Nepal is, what about, we went to, in Karnali, was it Karnali province, the banana farming? Tikapur municipality. What about sort of like thinking about high growth areas, right? And so maybe banana farming in Tikapur or Dhaka industry in Palpa. In fact, I'm supporting this Dhaka waistcoat that was made by one of our women entrepreneurs. So, thank you. Now, sort of towards the closing, sometimes when we, it's so easy to get confuddled with what the system has not done, and to keep waiting. But as entrepreneurs, you probably wouldn't. But this is where I think, as you innovate, you must also think about what innovation really means. When you innovate, you're not only trying to do something new, but you're also letting go of the old, which means you're going to challenge the system. You're going to challenge the market, right? And so this requires you to think about leadership more seriously. This requires you to think about, how do I lead my teams, and how do I lead the market so that I can change the mindset of the potential customers, and they will be able to understand what I'm trying to sell. But also I would encourage you to think about policy advocacy when you're ready, because we can't expect change to happen, but if we band together, that is probably possible. There are many organizations, and I see people here in the front. There are organizations, NYEF, CNI, YEF. There's so many other organizations that you could work with. Finally, to close, 3 thoughts because this is also part of sustainable development theme. Recently, I went to Lumbini province and went to 7 municipalities. I met, the mayors, deputy mayors, the government officials. And what I began to think about was, what does sustainable development really mean in Nepal? Sustainable development, right? Because what I found was development for a lot of people in these municipalities in Lumbini province was all about roads. Do I have a road connected to my house? That to them was development, right? In urban Nepal, we think about, do we have big buildings, right? Sort of like that. So, in the beginning, I used to think they want roads because the politicians have, construction equipments that they're trying to use. No, it was also the people that wanted roads to their houses, right? And I think this is where it's not just about roads, but also about human capacity. Also about human capacity, that's very important. And when we think about inclusion, and when we think about sustainable, I think it's very important to think about inclusion. Second, my second last thought is, development is not just about urban Nepal. I mean, I wish, we were organizing these types of programs outside of Nepal. I was recently at a panel at ISIMOD, and I said the same thing, right? How many of us in the room do not already know about the topics that the panel is discussing, right? And so I think it's very important to also think about, if we want, inclusive, wholesome development of Nepal, to also think about where rural Nepal is. I think it's extremely important to think about the supporting and creating gazelles in cities that create, hundreds of jobs. But at the same time, in federal Nepal, we have to remember that we have this multiplication factor of 753 now. That did not exist before, right? So if we are able to support, 100 entrepreneurs in each municipality, you multiply that by 753, that already becomes a lot. And if each of them is creating 10 jobs, that there is scale there as well. And finally, what I wanted to say was, hope lives in Nepal. We hear stories of people that are leaving the country, 2,500 people leaving the country every day, but we don't hear the stories about the 25 people that have come back and are starting enterprises, right? These are 25 people that come back with two very critical elements of leadership: working hard and being creative, right? Because when they were abroad, washing dishes or wiping the big mirrors, they were working hard many hours and doing that. And while they did that, they saw big buildings. So they want to achieve big things in their lives, right? And, it's not just the story of Goma Bhandari. It's not just the story of all of you, but I run a podcast and I interviewed Dilip Agrawal Dai. 30 years ago, when he began that journey, he was where you all were, right? Son of a research scholar, didn't have the access that he wanted. He came to Nepal, in fact, during his junior year in college with a $3,500 or whatever stipend, and started and stole the fax machine line from his father and started the enterprise, right? So he was also at a point where the ecosystem was weak. Hope lives in Nepal. The future of this hope depends on growth mindset, that of working hard, taking risks, which is what you all are doing. So again, thank you so much for inviting me here and giving me this opportunity to share my learnings around how to build an inclusive ecosystem for entrepreneurship and innovation in Nepal. Congratulations, good luck, and may the force be with you all.